WECU 1570 AM and W298BX 107.5 FM. Winterville, North Carolina. WNOS 1450 AM and W272BK 102.3 FM. Licensed to Newburgh, North Carolina.
Welcome to the News, Information, Education Awareness Show with Commissioner Mary Perkins-Williams. I'm Akila filling in for the Commissioner Mary Perkins-Williams on today, and next week she is taking a well-deserved break
for a while, and you're listening to us on the Awesome Radio Network. We're at WECU 1570 AM and 107.5 FM, Greenville,
Winterville, and surrounding.
We're also at WNOS in Newburgh at 1450 AM and 102.3 FM Newburgh.
Rocky Mount, WYLT 100.3 FM. Again, this is the Mary Perkins-Williams Show. Education, news, information, awareness. And today we have with us Kent Keeter. He is the Environmental Health Director for Pitt County. Kent Keeter, thank you for returning back to us
here on the Commissioner Mary Perkins-Williams Show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, great.
Well, awesome to have you here. We're on our social media networks. Just look for the WECU logo. We're also at awesomeradionetwork.org worldwide, all right? And also, if you want to call in and ask Kent Keeter some questions, you have concerns, you have comments, our dial-in
live
studio
number is 252-756-2008.
So we have a power pack show in line designed for you on today. Kent Keeter, again, is the Pitt County Environmental Health Director. Tell us what that is.
So environmental health is a division of the health department.
Mm-hmm.
We are commissioned by state law to help maintain the health of the public through basically mitigating or keeping things that we know are unhealthy out of the out of the way of the public. So an example of that would be restaurant inspections. So we would go in and inspect restaurants, and we would make sure that they were properly handling food, properly cooking the food, and getting rid of any steps that could cause disease or problems. So we want to prevent their sickness or health issues from the environment and that the people are dealing with. So the same thing would do with on-site wastewater. We would make sure that they have properly functioning septic systems and that we permit those septic systems so they put in and they'll work properly, so people don't come in contact with human waste and don't get sick because they don't. So we also deal with wells, making sure that your wells are placed where they in a proper locations with proper setbacks from source contamination so that you get good drinking water. So we're trying to prevent people from being sick by making sure that their environment is clean.
And mainly the water?
Water is part of it. A lot of diseases historically have been transmitted through water. So we want to make sure that we keep those water sources safe, whether that be runoff into the river or through the groundwater.
Okay. So when you say environmental health and you want to keep the environment safe, what is the environment?
So the environment would be anything that you come in contact with in your day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things we can't do anything about, but we specifically can deal with the construction of wells. We can definitely deal with restaurants, inspections of restaurants.
Okay.
Like I said before, we work with on-site wastewater septic systems. We also do lodging of hotels. We do inspections of hotel rooms to make sure that they're clean and properly done. We also deal with child cares and facilities. We'll inspect those. We do schools. We will inspect the schools to make sure that they're clean, properly maintained. We do mosquito control.
Mosquito control.
Yes, ma'am. We have a mosquito control officer. We do spray for mosquitoes when they get bad in the county. We don't really go inside the city. That's their jurisdiction. But we do it based off of numbers. So if someone complained about mosquitoes, we would actually go out and trap and put a trap out. And if there's an actionable level, we're not allowed just to spray. EPA does not allow us just to go out and spray every time somebody calls about mosquitoes. So we have to prove that it actually is a problem, so that we can go spray for mosquitoes. We do public swimming pools, hotels, apartment complexes, not your backyard swimming. We do not really do any inspections of those, but we want to make sure that the water is clean and clear and does not pose a hazard to the public swimming.
You said apartment complexes.
Yes.
So
if you have a swimming pool at an apartment complex, it would be considered a public swimming pool.
Okay.
Versus a private swimming pool, which is a backyard swimming pool on someone's property. We don't go to private swimming pools.
Okay.
But if it is a public a pool that is being used by the public, then we would have authority over that.
Now, so you threw me for a loop because when you said apartment complexes, I thought you were coming into the people's dwelling places of homes. And
We don't have any ability to do that, but we can go to the common swimming pool that they would all use, and they're required to have a permit, and they are required to have inspections.
okay. All right. And you mentioned hotels.
Yes, ma'am.
So is it a hotel swimming pool
If-
or the hotel itself?
So if they do nightly rentals, not monthly or weekly rentals, because that's a little different setup. But if they do nightly rentals, then that is considered a lodging facility, and we would go in and do a yearly inspection of that facility.
A yearly inspection.
So we can't go into occupied rooms, so we only look at the rooms that are. So we'll randomly select unoccupied rooms, and we'll look and we'll inspect it for cleanliness.
And what would happen if it's not cleaned?
So that is really more of a question for next week for my food lodging inspector. But yes, we would. They would get a bad inspection. So and there's a card for that. Like a grade card. So.
Okay. All right now. So you're listening to us here on Awesome Radio, WECU, 1570 AM and 107.5 FM on your radio dial. Also, we're in the New Bern area, the Rocky Mount area too. This is the Commissioner Mary Perkins-Williams show, news, information, awareness, and education. So Kent Keeter is our guest on today. He is the director of the Environmental Health Department at Pitt County. And he is educating us. He is making us aware of the environmental health safety protocols here in Pitt County. Now, does each county have its own protocol, or
is it the same?
So these are state laws,
state laws?
and the state gives us authority to basically administer those laws. So each county or group of counties, there are some districts that are multiple counties kind of bunched together. They have their own health department, and then they would have their own environmental health in that county. So if you were, say, in Craven County, then they have an environmental health section, every restaurant inspectors, and then they should be administering those laws the same as we.
Okay.
So they're all trained and certified through the state.
Now let's get into our water, drinking water, water that we use every day for. So what do you govern with that?
So we specifically deal with private drinking water wells. So if you live somewhere where there is not a municipal water supply, Eastern Pines, Green Utilities, Stokes, Bellevue Water, there's Horn Water, there's several water systems in Pitt County. But if you don't have access to that or choose not to use that, and you want to put a drinking water well down so that you can have water provided to you on your own property, then you are required by state law to get a permit to drill that well. So we go out and we make sure that that well is placed in a position that it is, meets all setbacks from potential sources of contamination.
Mhm.
So when we go out into a piece of property, we have to be 25 feet from any foundation of a building.
Okay.
And the purpose of that is most buildings in Eastern North Carolina are treated for termites. So we want to make sure that the well is far enough away from that house that none of that chemical will move over into that well. If there's a septic system on the property, we want to make sure that we're at least 50 feet from that septic system so that we have some space between your water supply and your wastewater. If there's oil, like an underground oil tank or an oil tank that could leak, we want to make sure that that well's not sitting right up next to that. So there's tons of setbacks that we deal with of potential sources of contamination. If you're next to an animal feedlot, sort of a farm stable that you have lots of animals in, we want to make sure that we're far enough away from that the manure from that doesn't contaminate your well. So that's not often, but occasionally it does. There's setbacks from ditches and ponds, and we just want to make sure that we place that well in a place where it does not have any contamination from something that could possibly leak or have an issue.
Okay. And how often do you go to inspect that well?
So we have construction standards. So we issue a permit for the construction of the well. In North Carolina, generally, a well driller is required. You have to have a license to drill a well. So a well driller will come out and drill that well.
You bring your mic just a little
Absolutely.
closer to you.
So there we go. So we have you have a well driller come out with our permit to drill that well, and then there are standards of construction that are required by the state, and we make sure that well driller builds that well properly, and that includes that it's put where we want it put. It also would that they grout that well. So when you drill a well, you have to still the surface from where the water's coming out of the bottom of that well, because you don't want somebody to spill something or it to rain in water to rush to the pipe and just go down to the bottom of that well. So they have to put a concrete or a bentonite clay seal 20 feet, and we actually inspect that and make sure that that seal is put in place and it's properly constructed. We also test the water from that well. We make sure it's constructed properly. Then we do when you buy a well permit, a large portion of that fee is for the testing. We send that into the state lab, and then they will test that well for bacteriological contamination, and they will do inorganic chemicals. So they'll look for lead, arsenic. They'll see how much iron, sodium is in the well, fluoride. There's about 20 different chemicals that naturally occur in the ground that there can be levels that exceed safety standards on. So we want to make sure that people are aware of what's in their groundwater, so they when they drink it, that they can feel confident that they're not having issues.
Why would someone rather have well water than city water or county water?
So, people love to be self-sufficient sometimes. They will choose a well. A well's expensive to drill, but it's kind of a one-time expense versus a water bill where you get it every month. So people sometimes choose to go with well water. A lot of it's aesthetic, the taste. Some people prefer the taste of the groundwater.
Really?
It has, like I said, it has natural minerals dissolved in it. Some of it our body needs. We need calcium. We need iron. We need these things. It's what we've always had from creation. That's what we drink. So people like the taste of the water at Grandma's house. And they may not like the taste of the water coming in from the utility, because it's going to have a different taste. It's going to have to be chlorinated. So people may not like chlorine in their water. That's a personal choice. It may not be a health issue, but it's a taste issue, it's an aesthetic issue.
So then if well water, from what I'm understanding, if it's a little bit better on the taste,
it can be, yeah,
and the calcium and everything that's in it, then why do we put chlorine and other filters and stuff in utility water?
So the water is coming from one of two places from the utility. It's either coming from groundwater, so it's the same water basically, maybe a different aquifer, maybe a different region, but same source of water is coming from the ground, or it's coming from the river. Most of the water that we drink comes from the river.
The river, like the
Tar River, yes. And it's pulled into the water treatment plant for Greenville. We'll talk about Greenville specifically.
Okay.
Greenville pulls, they have wells, they can use wells, but in general, they mostly use river water. It is treated to a very high standard. And it is placed in pipes and supplied to the city and into their system. And chlorine is there specifically to make sure there's no bacterial contamination in that water, because there's miles and miles and hundreds, thousands of miles of pipe running all over the place. And if something were to get in that water system, if someone were to puncture a pipe, just working utilities, working in their yard, and a bacteria got into that water, there needs to be something in there that can kill it, so that it doesn't create a health hazard. So federal standards are, and I'm not an expert on this by any means, but you have to have a residual of chlorine in case like that happens.
Okay.
So it is to protect the public from the contamination of that water system. And chlorine has, it is a residual. It will stay in the water, and it will actually continue to treat the water as it moves through those lines.
And that's why too it's not good to litter.
Well, littering can cause runoff to go into the river where we get our water from. So we want to be very cognizant of anything that we put on the ground that could contaminate the river, because the river is the source of water for the majority of the people in Greenville.
Okay. So we get our water from the Tar River mainly, talking about Pitt County, and it's filtered.
It is, like I said, it's filtered and treated to a very high standard.
Okay. All right. And it's safe to drink.
Yes, I believe so. Absolutely.
Okay. So why do I hear conversations with people saying, I don't drink tap water?
So there's a couple of personal choice issues. There have been issues in the country where there has been issues with tap water. And that has created, I think, a mistrust sometimes of there's a mistrust of government all over the place, and there's a mistrust of government agencies, and there have been failures, and those failures are seen, and there's real consequences to those failures. So I think people just have a little bit of fear of what's coming out. There's a little bit of trust issue. I will tell you, if you go to and I did it right before the show, if you go to Green Utilities, they do reports on what's in their water. And I know at my house, I'll get a report on water every year that they mail out, and they say, this is what we found in our water. This is where, if any of the standards that how we've met these standards. And I know they test their water every day. They send people all over the city to randomly pull samples from different areas of the city to make sure that water it meets all the standards it's supposed to meet. But there's still that lingering question in people's minds that they have trust issues, or they may not like the taste. Like I said, sometimes it's a taste issue. They grew up in another place or another area where the water tasted different, and maybe they don't like some people don't like the smell or the taste of the chlorines that they put in it.
So then we can add a filter then to our speaker.
Yeah. So they're going to guarantee that water coming in is clean, and if you at the very point of use, that endpoint, if you want to put a filter in there or have a the Brita, everyone's had a Brita filter. Have a Brita filter or some sort of inline filter. That's a good filter. Do some research. All filters are not the same. Some are way better than others. But there's also a lot of sales in that too. They'll tell you it's the best thing ever. So really do your research on filters. But if you have a filter that you have done your research on and you feel good about, there's nothing wrong with that.
If we were to boil our water before using it, drinking it, cooking with it, bathing, will we still need a filter?
So boiling is really just going to take care of any bacteriological contamination. I guess it could also boil off any, chemical contaminants. There shouldn't be any chemical contaminants in the water. We've got big issues. So, but if you have a fear that there's something in your water that's bacteriological based, and that's why that chlorine's there, boiling the water. So every now and then, Greenville, any municipality will put in a boil water notice. You've probably seen this during storms,
Yes.
and that's when they can't guarantee there hasn't been a water break somewhere, or there has been a main break, and they fear that possibly some soil or something from that break has gotten into their system. So they will issue a boil water notice, and that's just to make sure that people, when they get water at their house, if they're going to drink it, they can be absolutely sure that there is no bacteria in that water when they put it. Boiling kills bacteria, and that's the point of doing boiled water.
Okay. So bottled water versus tap water for drinking and cooking, which is better?
It's impossible to say because we don't know where the bottled water is coming from. And because sometimes there are some companies that will they'll take their water, they'll filter it to an extreme measure so that it's basically pure water. Sometimes it's distilled or reverse osmosis and filtered, and they'll actually have to add minerals back into it so it doesn't leach minerals out of your body. So a lot of your bottled waters are treated to a very high standard, and then they'll add minerals for taste. Because, like I said, the water we drink generally has minerals dissolved in it. So they'll add some salt or calcium back into it so that it tastes better. It's not flat. Distilled water, you can drink it, but if it's your only source of water for a long time, it can actually be a health issue because it will actually leach the minerals out of your body.
Distilled water.
Water. It's safe to drink. It's okay, but you don't want to drink it all day, every day. That's all you ever drink. It's that's not what that's for.
So what's the best bottled water to drink then?
So I don't really even know.
Purified.
It just look on it, make sure that it's been it's been treated, purified to a high standard. They used to put the source of the water, in the labeling. Sometimes it would say, it would be just some city, New York, municipal water supply, what have you. And they may have really good water there. So it may not, just because it's a municipal supply doesn't mean it's a bad water. But you don't ever really know where it comes from. I mean, they've got water that comes from glacier. They've got water that comes from islands in the Pacific. They ship water all over the world. And it's mostly taste.
And we pay for it.
And we pay for it. They put it in bottles, they ship it all over the world, and it's expensive to do that. There's a lot of transport. There's a lot of infrastructure moving a bottle of water halfway around the world so we can drink it.
And then the cost of that bottled water passes on to the consumer.
It does. They're going to make, there's money in this. There's a lot of money in bottled water. And I don't think any reputable bottled water company wants to give you a bad product. I think they're all trying to do good things, but it really comes down to taste. And it may not be any better or worse than what you have coming out of your tap. So, but I would recommend, if you do research on water, look and see, go on the web, see how that company, the bottled water that you love, see how they treat their water, see what standards they're using. If I know, if go to the Greenville utilities, if you've got Greenville water, or to the Farmville or your municipality, and look at their reports and see how they test and what they find and what their levels are. There's always going to be something in water. Water is a very interesting substance. It loves to latch on to things, and minerals. That's why things dissolve in it. So it's always going to have. You're never going to have absolutely. You don't want to drink absolutely pure water. It's not good for you in the long run. Like distilled water, like I said, it doesn't have any minerals in it.
Okay.
And it doesn't taste as good.
So distilled water is pure water?
Distilled water is what you've done is you've evaporated the water, so just the water molecules go into steam, and then that's the distillation process. It makes steam, and then it's condensing back out. So all of anything that was dissolved in that water generally doesn't get picked up into the steam. So you're distilling it, all the minerals out and just having water.
Okay.
I'm sure there's a little in there. It's really hard to get pure water.
Yeah.
So that's and a lot of companies do that. They'll distill their water, they'll put it under a lot of heat, and they'll make steam, and it'll drip back out into the water. But like I said, that it's not good if you drink distilled water every day, all day. That's all you're drinking. If you have a glass of distilled water every day, along with other things, absolutely perfectly fine. It's not going to be a problem. But if that's the only source of water, that could be a health issue. It's through time.
We're halfway into today's show, the Mary Perkins-Williams show, Commissioner Mary Perkins-Williams, where we provide education, awareness, education. I said that already, right? Awareness and information. You're listening to us on the Awesome Radio Network, and we have Kent Keeter here. He is the Pitt County Environmental Health Director, and we're talking about water. How safe is it? What's good to drink? How do we process it after it comes to us in our tap? So we're talking about now distilled water. So distilled water, what I'm gathering, may be best for ironing.
It's good for ironing because there's no minerals and it's not going to clog up your iron. It's good for steamers because basically you're boiling it and the steam comes out, it leaves the minerals in there. So you'll get mineral cake and it'll deposits in your iron and your steamer, things like that. They recommend distilled water. And like I said, you can drink it. There's no, it is absolutely good to drink. You just don't want to have that be your only source of water.
And distilled water is good for CPAPs too.
It is good for clean. Distilled water is very good for cleaning things. Very, very good for cleaning things.
Okay.
Like I said, and if you do drink a lot of distilled water, do some research on it. Anything I'm saying today, please. And I'm not 100% right on everything. I can make mistakes, so just please do your own research, go on, look it up. It's so simple these days, and just try to look for reputable sources. Don't go down some rabbit hole. But just look and see, at what I'm saying, and you'll see that. There are some things that can cause problems if you're not careful.
To be a part of today's show, to ask Kent Keeter any questions, comments that you may have, concerns that you may have, our live call-in number is 252-756-2008. That's 252-756-2008. Maybe you're having issues with your water. Do you live out in the country? You have well water. You have minerals in your well water. Your clothes that you wash with, they're kind of on the rusted side. Call us and talk with Kent Keeter about that. Ask questions. Who do you need to contact
about the rust that is in your well water?
Okay, so you have city water. You're finding things in your city water. It's not filtered, or you don't think it's clean enough to drink. Call Kent Keeter, and he can direct you to where you need to go with that information. Kent Keeter, give your information out.
So I'm the, like I said, environmental health director. If you need to contact me, you can call our office, the main line at 252-902-3200.
Awesome. All right. So now is your chance, y'all. 2008 is the number to call. 252-756-2008 if you want to be a part of this live conversation right now with the Pitt County Environmental Health Director, Mr. Kent Keeter. Okay. So, Kent Keeter, talking about water, let's talk about tattoo parlors.
Okay, we regulate tattoo artists as one of the things that we do. They do have water. They're required to have hand washing sink with hot and cold running water that's available to the artists. It should be a designated sink. So generally not a bathroom that they have to go through. With tattoos, artists, we specifically permit the artist, and that artist is tied to the facility. So if you have a tattoo studio and you have a tattoo artist, we will say that artist operates from that studio. And that permit ties them to the studio.
Okay.
If they decide they want to move across town to another studio, that permit is no longer good. We have to move them to that new studio and permit them at that studio.
Okay.
Because of that, there are no mobile tattoo legal tattoo artists. So if someone's going to meet you at your house and give you a tattoo, that's not legal. If you're meeting them in a hotel room somewhere, that's not legal. If they're showing up at a party and doing tattoos at a party, a group of people, weddings, things like that, that's not legal. They have to be in their studio. And to my knowledge, there are no home-based tattoo artists in Pitt County. Everyone has a studio that they're tattooed.
That we know of.
There are a good number of tattoo artists in Pitt County. The number varies. There's anywhere from 80 to 120 tattoo artists at any time in Pitt County.
Wow.
There's a lot of traveling artists that come through and students come in. A lot of times in the summer, some of those artists move to other areas where there's a little more work. So they'll go to bigger cities or travel and do conventions, and then they'll come back in. So there's a fluctuation in the number of artists. We get a lot of tattoo artists.
Okay. And so if they were to botch up your tattoo, then that has nothing to do with you.
If they give you a bad tattoo, that is absolutely nothing to do with us.
Okay.
Because we don't deal with the quality of the artist.
Okay.
We don't deal with, how they do their tattoo in the scheme of the art.
Okay.
We are only in the tattoo facility to look at sanitation and cleanliness, to make sure that their tattoo table that they're working on, their chair that they're working in, their barber chair, their table that you lay down in, is cleanable, and that they're using that they're wiping it down. We're making sure that they're wearing gloves, that they're not reusing needles. It is illegal to reuse a needle. Most tattoo artists now, needles are a lot different. You can buy packs of needles now, where 50 years ago they had to make their own needles every day. So there's temptation to reuse them, and that's that can create an issue where bloodborne pathogens can be transmitted between people. So now they use disposable needles. Everybody will use a needle once, they pop it off into their machine, they throw it away, they sanitize everything, and there's no
supposed to.
And they're so cheap now. All of our artists that are permitted are not reusing needles. That's such a crazy thing to do now. I don't think anyone in their right mind would do that. But yeah, new sterile needles are required.
Do you regulate nail spas and foot spas?
We do not. That is a different organization. I think that's I know hair salons or cosmetology.
Yes.
They may be nail spas as well. But we do not do nail spas. We don't do piercing. Piercing is unregulated, so there's no one that does ear piercings or body piercings.
Nail salons and foot spas use water.
I'm gonna look up who does that.
Okay. Because sometimes when, say I'm getting a foot spa and they don't clean that bowl, then there may be a virus or bacteria in that bowl from the last customer.
There could be. So it says the North Carolina Cosmetic Art Examiners, so the cosmetology board oversees their same as hair salons. So they are regulated, and if you have a problem with your nails, please look them up and call them, so they will send somebody out, I'm sure.
The cosmetology board.
The NC Board of Cosmetic Art Examiners, that's what it's called now.
Okay.
So that's changed, I think. But yeah, they are regulated, and they do have inspectors that go out. Those are state. That's a state.
Okay, well, great then. So they're not just doing whatever they want to do. They are regulated, but just not through Pitt County.
Just not through Pitt County. They haven't given us that one yet. So we stay out of that. So.
Okay. All right. So we have 16 minutes left in today's show. This is the Commissioner Mary Perkins-Williams show, where we provide news, information, education, and awareness. Today's guest is Keeter. He's a returning guest, and he's the director of the Pitt County environmental health. And we're talking about water, we're talking about regulating safety, sanitation, and environmental health covers a whole lot of areas.
Mhm.
And you mentioned child care, adult care,
Mhm.
institutions.
Yes, ma'am.
Talk about child care, adult care, and institutions.
Okay. I can do a little bit of that. Those are also some questions for my food and lodging. Next week she can get a little deeper into that, but I can talk a little bit about it. We do. If you operate, there are some home daycares that operate. That not exactly sure the number. I think there's a certain level that you reach where you have to have inspections. And once you exceed that number of children, you have to be a licensed daycare. So we do inspections of those daycares. We'll go in and we'll make sure that they're meeting cleanliness standards. That they are one of the big things is diaper changing. They're washing their hands properly. They're sanitizing the diaper changing station, and they're doing those types of activities in a sanitary way, so that they're not contaminating a sick child and someone else getting sick during a diaper change. Because that's a very easy place to move to contaminate. So we'll make sure that they're storing their food properly in a daycare. And a lot of times there's milk, and people bring bottles from home, and they're making sure they're labeled properly so that they know who's involved. Yeah. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of issues going on in child daycare that we look at and make sure they're done properly.
What about the play mats or the sleep mats? Do you spray a certain solution on it to see if there's a virus?
We don't see that, but we there's no way to really tell that. But what we can do is, I know, like for toys and surfaces, there's they are supposed to spray it down with a sanitizing solution and wipe it clean. And it has to be the correct solution. Sometimes they mix their own, and we'll have if they use chlorine, they use Clorox. A lot of people do that. That it's not too powerful. There's a range that they have to use. So we test it to make sure that that they're not just putting pure Clorox. You just can't put pure Clorox down on something. So they're mixing it properly, and they're using the right levels of sanitation. And that they're storing those chemicals away from the children. Those have to be in areas that are not accessible to the child. So they don't have to be in cabinets that are locked, or areas that are off limits to children, so they don't accidentally grab something and the thing that you're using to clean can actually become an issue with the child. So we make sure that's clean.
Okay. And institutions. What institutions are you talking about?
So we'll do. So we'll do group homes.
Okay.
We'll do, and that's mostly what that is. But we'll also we inspect hospitals. So we'll go in. We'll do. I'm just drawing a blank right now, but there's a ton of different institutions that we look at. Mostly the group homes.
The beds that they sleep on.
So yeah, we'll go in and we'll make sure that the
mattresses.
We will look and make sure that everything is that things are being laundered and cleaned properly. We'll make sure that it's a clean environment for them. I've never personally done those inspections, so like I said, I would have to. I mean, I oversee what they do, and I look at their reports, but that's one of the things I'm not really a super expert on. I have people that work for me that are much better at these questions.
Is modular home permits and inspections your category?
We don't really do. That's going to be building inspections.
Something wrong.
That's going to be building inspections, I think.
I clicked on something wrong here. Okay, let's get back to where we were. All righty then.
So I can go back to we can on the theme of water. Swimming pools is something that I'm very knowledgeable about because I've ran that program for many years before I was director. That's a wonderful example of us actually getting in the water and being exposed to water. So we want to make sure that we don't have health issues in our swimming pools.
Mhm.
Because people jump in and they'll, I've swallowed some water in a swimming pool before, accident, it's gone out my nose. We want to make sure that the water in those swimming pools are clean. So what I would tell people, we go out, we do inspect them. We look at, we open them, and sometimes we do surprise inspections. We'll do complaint investigations. If someone says that the pool's doesn't look or feel right when they're in there, but what people need to understand is if you can't see the bottom of that swimming pool, if you can't see that main drain cover, if that water is cloudy, don't get in the pool.
Don't get in the pool.
If it's green,
Mhm.
I mean, it can be a little tint of a green, but if you can't clearly see the bottom, clearly see the drain cover, then there's something in that water growing, algae, something that you don't want to be in there. And their chemicals are not right.
Mhm.
Something's going wrong. And we want to make sure that people know don't get in the swimming pool if you can't see the main drain covers. The water needs to be clear enough to see the bottom.
Now, there's a lot of urination in
So,
pool water.
so that is a problem.
Mhm.
I would tell people, please don't do that at a swimming pool. Go use the bathroom. Get up. I know, it seems like it's so easy, but that's why we have chlorine in the pool.
Mhm.
There's a lot of water in a swimming pool, and we do have a residual chlorine. So when we do, all public swimming pools have to have a way to create a residual, either chlorine or bromine residual in the swimming pool, so that when someone does do that in the swimming pool,
Mhm.
that the chlorine will bind to those molecules and create chloramines, and then go through a cycle to break that down. So it will actually treat water. We are having that water ready to treat if someone comes in and does something like that. But
How long will it take for it to
it's
break
pretty
down?
like urine is pretty almost instant.
Okay.
Now, if there's I'm a little weird now. If there's a fecal incident,
Mhm.
or a vomitous incident, someone gets sick in the pool, that's a little different. There are, if that happens, the operator is supposed to have everybody get out of the pool.
Mm. Okay.
And then they would remove any solids, and then they would super chlorinate the pool. So there's standards for that. So they would add a lot of chlorine to the pool,
Mhm.
and then they would let it sit. The more chlorine they put in, the less time they have to sit, but then they have to make sure that there's not too much chlorine for people to get in the pool. So those are bad days. If that happens, I've had that happen in a swimming pool my kids were at. And
Really?
I'm there. There was an incident. Everyone got out of the pool, and the pool operator was like, "It's going to be 30 minutes." It's not going to be 30 minutes. We just went home because it's going to take longer than that. So,
Yeah.
and they just didn't want to run everybody off. They knew it was going to take longer than that. But it's probably an hour or more if you have an incident like that in a swimming pool. So, and that's with high chlorine. You're going to get in. There's going to be a higher chlorine in there. It may you may feel it in your eyes, or you may get so. If something like that happens, it's best just to call it a day at that point. You go play with the water hose, or go to a park or something at that point,
Okay.
because you don't want to risk your health.
So after the pool,
Mhm.
is it best to take a shower? Is it salt water in the pool? Or
So there's there are like I said, every pool has to have a residual chlorine. So there's a couple of different ways to do that. One is with chlorine taps. So there's little chlorine tabs they put in the tube, and they run water through that tube in the pump room, and it puts a chlorine solution into the pool. So they're adding chlorine that way. Sometimes it's liquid chlorine that they're dripping into the system, and it's adding that chlorine to the swimming pool.
Mhm.
And then there are what they call saltwater pools. People love saltwater pools because they feel really good on the skin. They're easy to maintain, but basically salt is sodium chloride. So there's sodium and chlorine.
Mhm.
So they put it through. So they add salt. They kept salt water in the pool, and then they put it through. Basically, in the pump room, an electrode that will actually pull the chlorine and salt, the salt and sodium, the chlorine and sodium apart, and they create chlorine that way. So they're still creating chlorine from the salt.
Mm.
So that's what saltwater pools do. They're not adding chlorine chemical in; it's creating chlorine.
Okay. We have a couple of questions. What does that question or comment read right there?
It says, "What about open water places such as ponds?" So those are generally unregulated by us because it's not a permitted facility.
Mhm.
There's risk in that because it's a natural waterway. I do know some of the swimming areas, like there are groups with the state that go out and test like at the beach, like in the sound, and they'll let you know if there's contamination in that water. If you get into like a private property, like a pond or like a creek or something like that, there's probably not going to be any testing of that, so you won't really know. Just be careful not to swallow the water and try not to get it up your nose. Because it is a natural pond. There's no treatment. Is it okay to swim in? I mean, you'll probably be okay, but just be very careful about swallowing water, or I wouldn't go underwater in a pond or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Obviously.
And that question came from Commissioner Mary Perkins-Williams, who's watching from wherever she is. Here's another one.
There we go. So, like I said, the safety recommendations for a pond or open water is just try not to get any in your mouth or nose or eyes. I would just I wouldn't be diving in or anything like that. Just be careful with it.
Okay. All right. We have 4 minutes left in today's show. We're talking with Kent Keeter. He is the Pitt County Environmental Health Director, keeping us all safe with our water, our drinking water, our tap water, the well water inspection and drilling for private property. Yeah.
So once that, and I don't think we've finished that off. Once that well is completed and drilled and tested, we don't go back. So on a private well, unless people ask us to come back. So we get people on wells that every few years they'll come in and they'll say, hey, can you sample our well for us? And we can do samples. It is a fee based on what you want sampled. But yes, we'll go back. But we're gonna, if it's built properly and sealed properly, generally something would have to change for that water quality to change. So you have to have something to break on the well or something to happen. But as a peace of mind, people do come back and get water testing occasionally.
So how deep in the ground do you drill the well?
Okay, so there's we can go several hundred feet to find water that is a good quality. It really depends on where in the county you are and what aquifers you have available under you.
And then what is aquifer?
So an aquifer is so where we are in Pitt County, the rock is very deep. So we are on sort of a layer cake of sediment where the oceans come back and forth through time. So you have layers of that layer cake that have a water bearing, and you have layers that water doesn't move through. It's clay. So those layers that have water in them are considered aquifers. A lot of times they'll recharge, tens to hundreds of miles, miles and miles away where the aquifer hits the surface, maybe like in Rocky Mountain or somewhere, and water will move down through that through time and pressurize that aquifer. Sometimes it's trapped in those aquifers.
We have a caller. Hello, caller. You are live on Awesome Radio.
Message. Your Google listing is currently under audit. And
that was a telemarketer call. Okay. All right.
So an aquifer is a source of water in the ground. It is a layer of rock or sediment in the ground that holds water naturally.
Okay.
So and there's and depending upon where that is, how deep it is, some aquifers have better water than others. Some have salt in them from the ocean, and that's not something that we would really want to drink. Some don't produce a lot of water, so we don't really use the water from those aquifers. Others have very high water yields and very, very high aesthetic water. It's a very it is high quality water. So we do have very good water and available to us in our aquifers here.
Great. Awesome. Kent Keeter, thank you so much for being our guest on today, the Commissioner Mary Perkins-Williams Show, where we provide information, education, awareness to our community. And you'll be back next week, or one of your staffers will be
Yes,
here?
I'm hoping to have my food and lodging supervisor here next week, who is So she is an expert on all things food and lodging institutions. So she should be able to answer those deep, in-depth deep dive questions about restaurant, food trucks, restaurants.
hot dog carts.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
She's going to be very good at that. So.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the Awesome Radio Network and today's show. Here's another comment right there. What does that read?
So, how do you determine if a well is failing? Generally, a failing well would be one that is.
We may have to pick that up next week.
Well, I can do it. I can do it real quickly. This
is Awesome Radio
Yep, gotcha.
Network. We have 5 seconds left. Thank you so much for tuning in. Join us again the next time. The
Right.
11th annual
Yep.
Youth
It
Incarceration
would just be
Ministry
not
event
producing enough
beginning
water.
12 noon Saturday.
That's a failing well for us.
St. John Missionary Baptist Church, Soul Saving Center,
Um,